April 30th, fresh off a big meeting with the city council and et al. About reopening. Apparently the word is that we're not reopening, but you can dress like we've reopened. Is that the idea there with this?
That's not the idea, Joe, but thank you again for having me. I apologize for being late for our appointment because we had a marathon city council meeting. I thought our city council and mayor and administrators did just an amazing job of talking about the governor's announcement. And what I'd really want to do for everybody is hear what we discussed so that everybody understands. But what we learned from this is both the mayor and city council do agree with the governor that if we can take these steps that he's outlining, that we can begin to open ourselves on May 4th to those who are allowed to do that. And what I want to make sure is people understand how we're going to do that so that we can provide some confidence to the consumer and to our employees that we don't want to put anyone in harm's way. We don't want any more deaths. We don't want any more of this. We want to get back to it, but we're going to do it safely. So we had a great, almost 6-hour conversation about how to do it. But I believe our community is in line and online, ready to get going.
Great. And did you have some visuals to share from the meeting?
Yeah, what I really would love to do is, but before I start, man, you sound different today on your and the webcast. And maybe it's something that others can learn about. But the importance of, if you're going to do these, just a good microphone. You got something different going on?
Yeah, this microphone I had at my house for a while, and got tired of yelling at this webcam, so I thought I'd bring it in and set it up. And
well, it's a good lesson for all of us that it really does make a difference. So, but yeah, if you don't mind, I'm going to share the screen and just go through a quick presentation so that everybody has it, so they can follow along and understand really how our community is going to set itself apart from others who are trying to move forward. And I think it's very important. So let's get started.
Wonderful.
All right. So what we're calling this is something you and I've played with for the last few years, is the St. Pete Way, right? We've talked about the book. We've talked about the outline of all the chapters. And this is how we're going to reopen and recover from this effort, is through the St. Pete Way. You can see we've put a little safe mask on our Pelican because we believe he will go face to face with some folks. All right, here, and let me go to the next step then. Let me see if I can. All right. What we want to make sure every consumer of St. Pete and every employee of St. Pete and every employer of St. Pete understands is we're going to do this like the governor and the mayor has asked us to do, which is safety first, step by step. So this is not a rush back to everybody going back to normal. In fact, it's exactly the opposite. It's a very first step to ensure that we can get back to normal. If we, in the next 4 weeks, take the steps each 2 weeks to do it correctly, we can get out of this. But we have got to make sure that we have a commitment from you as a consumer and from you as an employee and from you as an employer that you're going to do this first. That's the only way this is going to work. Okay? So here's why we're going to do that, Joe, is because literally, and most the folks that are watching this and understand this, because of the million so folks that have filed for unemployment in just Florida alone, a majority of those still haven't even received their resources. We have a system that hasn't caught up with the volume that you're looking at right here. This is just a chart that shows the unemployment claims in March over the last years, and you can see nothing like this before. But that's why it's critical, because these are human lives. And this is the chart I used to refer to. We're talking about over 1 million people that have got an issue right now, and we've got to deal with it. We want to keep them safe, and we want to keep them out of harm's way, but we've got to deal with these issues. So our strategy is called the 4 R's. It's something the Florida Chamber is working on with us. They developed it through McKinsey. So it's kind of got a strategy statement for each one of these things. So you think you're going to be reopened, but we have spent, you and I, for the last 34 days of these conversations, have been in this relief box of what can we offer these individuals, these small and medium businesses, and these large corporations, just to get them through this. You've heard about Fighting Chance. You've heard about Pinellas Cares. You've heard about the PPP program. You've heard about the bridge loan program. We brought all those to you. And what I was going to say is we're not done, because every business doesn't open up on Monday. In fact, most don't. So we got to continue our relief efforts while we get into the next box of reopen efforts. So how do we protect our public health and restart these critical sectors? That is what we're doing today. Tomorrow, if we get good at it, we'll get into the recovery, which means we start bringing back all the other folks and we start stimulating the demand. So maybe we say in Florida that tourists can come back. Right now, we don't want them back because we don't know where they've been. So let's get good at the reopen part before we get to the recover part. To us, the reimagine part, even though you and I have reimagined the world every day, reimagine takes into account all the lessons learned and helps shape us to make sure we're a sustainable and resilient community going forward. So that's how we're going to use our structure. And why I want to hear every business to hear this, we've got to get this right. This is about a V. We've heard about this back in 2007 through 2010 about a V-shaped recovery for our economy or a U-shaped. The V-shaped means you bounce back very quickly. The U-shaped means you drag it along. If we do this correctly as a community, this is a chart that the Florida Chamber's state economists put together along with many other economists to begin to identify if we do this correctly or if we don't. So what's your optimistic scenario and what's your pessimistic scenario? The optimistic scenario is if we do this correct, the way the governor is leading us into it and the way our mayor is leading us into it very carefully, we could see a rebound that only leaves us with a dent of about 2.3% of our GDP and allows us to get recovered by first quarter of next year. If you and I mess this up, and 30 days from now, we're all back in complete isolation because we didn't follow all the rules. We have an opportunity to lose almost 9% of our economy, and you and I won't recover till second quarter of 2024. So very critical that everybody pause for a moment and go, do you want to be the one that screws this up for St. Pete? Do your behaviors matter that much that you would risk all that you see on this slide right now? That's what we're trying to tell our community. And we've watched other communities do it. We know what Hong Kong and Singapore did as far as going back too early without the right kind of restrictions. You see on these charts where Hong Kong eased their restrictions back in March, but by the end of March, we're back in full restrictions based on not following all the guidelines. Same thing with Singapore, thinking they had their restrictions in place, and a month later, they banned off non-gatherings again. South Korea is kind of the model we're hopeful of in our community, in our state, where you can really get it flat and then you can keep it flat through smart testing and isolation and contact tracing. So we're going to talk about those as well. What we were looking for, what the mayor is looking for, are where the red arrows are. So what you see in front of you, Joe, it is all the gates, we call them the 6 gates that the federal government has said your state can open up if you follow these. Well, our governor decided that we follow all these, and the data he showed last night proved that. Now, our mayor said which ones are important to him. Those are the ones in red. So what we're looking at for St. Pete, what we're going to be monitoring is this percent of positive tests. But we're going to be looking at percent of positive tests and make sure they don't rise above 6% is what the mayor asked us to do. So now you and I have a bogey for our scorecard when we open up the data every morning about how did we do? Are we getting higher than 6%? And if we are, guys, I'm telling you, we're going to have to start closing again. So monitor the data is really important. And the other parts of what the mayor is asking us to do is make sure that our hospitals have enough critical care beds as well as beds. We've checked in, they do. And that we need to get robust testing in place. We learned from our hospitals today that many of them have a one-day turnaround now, 45-minute turnaround in most places. The rest of the communities are going to catch up to that. But we also need to work on this contact tracing to make sure that we understand if someone's been contacted with an infected person, how do we get a hold of them? I think there's some technology solutions ahead for that. So what we recommended to everybody about this is know the numbers. If you're a business leader right now, you should go, I need to understand these 6 criteria because it's behooving upon me to know if I'm in a safe environment for my customers and for my employees. So we're asking that the county provide even more data for us. And if they can't do it, we're going to ask our data analytics cluster here, all those great tech firms here to assist us with that. If you're watching and you can assist us, please help. The second part is this whole notion of how do we source our supply chain? If I'm going to ask you as a restaurateur and you decide that you're going to have some people wear masks because they're face-to-face in the conversation and you're going to ask them to wear masks, you would feel very bad if you took away a mask from a nurse who needed one that same night to take care of someone with a COVID patient, right? So we don't want to do that. We don't want to put anyone in harm's way. We just said we want it open safely. So making sure that Pinellas County has the best supply chain, that you don't have to figure out how to get the information, that somehow we understand what you need and that you have ways to click on it and get get in line to get the resources you need while you still find other resources like everybody's doing. But we're better than, you and I interviewed Mighty Mo and her 3D printers and the St. Pete makers who are making those, one at a time for critical nurses on hospital floors. We've got to get better than that, because I'm worried that if we create more of a demand for those PPEs without the supply chain, we're going to put ourselves in a bigger issue. And then the final piece is what you and I've talked about is, how do we do more of this contact tracing? Can we get some of our folks to assist with that effort? Because everybody is just so overwhelmed at the government level. What we've asked the city to do, quite frankly, Joe, is start investing in some of these as well. How do we, put some of the money into these things so that we can get going again? And then the final part before we talk about reopen is the relief efforts need to continue. We talked about Pinellas Care just opening up. That starts Monday. Fighting Chance just changed its ability. If you got denied, you should go back and look, because today it starts a whole new Fighting Chance fund for us. And there's a lot of other opportunities, but it's not enough. We've heard so much about how we've missed a lot of people, and quite a few people still haven't heard a word. So we can never get away from relief. I would say for the next year or so, you and I are going to be talking about the relief efforts of our businesses as we get everybody back to work. And obviously from a St. Pete Way perspective and a Chamber Way, we're focused on equity and relief as well. We understand that those who might have the ability to take care of themselves now need to take care of anybody else that they need, that they want around them. So we are really trying to make sure that every person in our community has somebody to be supportive of to get what they need to get reopened. The final thing we talked about before we said reopen is I've got the President Trump, I've got Governor DeSantis, I've got a county administrator and a mayor all giving us these kind of policies and guidelines. What we've just asked is, can we just align them? Can we make it so that a business doesn't have to check with each one of these boxes, that they all build on each other? We're very pleased today. The city council and the mayor agreed that that was the right strategy. So while there may be little tweaks the mayor might bring out about the governor's guidelines, he's already said that start following the guidelines that the governor has put out. And in the next 24 and 48 hours, if the mayor feels like there's something specific to us that he needs to address, he's going to do that. So our businesses need to get ready. But what we've asked our businesses is get ready. The government is going to direct policy. They're going to tell you about these public spaces. They're going to tell you that you can't or can go play pickleball or tennis on the tennis courts. They're going to make sure that the public safety can enforce anything about our restaurants, making sure that we're being safe. They're going to make sure that people can get to their jobs in a safe way through transportation. What you and I as business owners are responsible for is this guidelines, this customer and client interactions, these configurations of our new restaurant and retail operations, and the operating decisions and policy manuals that we're creating. That's what we're working on right now. So we are really asking our business community in St. Pete to step up and help us create the guidelines that we can present so that everybody can get open. I just want everybody to hear this again, because I live at Crescent Lake and I see it every day. This does not mean we're wide open again. Phase one means that if you're a vulnerable individual with any kind of immune issue, don't come back out yet. It's not time yet. The virus is still out there. We are trying to determine how we can keep social distancing from spreading it. And what we're also saying is every individual, whether you're in Crescent Lake Park or Publix, please follow the appropriate social distancing. You may not want to wear a mask. You may think you don't need to wear a mask. There's others that do. So just honor the St. Pete way, which is respect that those folks want their social distancing. And again, we can't group yet, Joe. We're not having the big party at your house in your backyard where the kegger comes out. We're just not going to do that. And we're going to make sure we don't do that, because we don't want to go back into isolation. And obviously the last part is you're not going to jump on a plane just yet, maybe a little longer before you plan that summer vacation. For our employers, we now know that our schools and our youth camps are still closed. We're trying to work very hard with our city to work on this, because we know that's going to be a critical issue for our employees coming back to work. We now still know our senior facilities are not going to receive any visitors. They're going to still have the strict protocols because they are the most vulnerable. We understand that the large venues may start opening up. Not every one of them will open up. They're going to be restricted, but sit-down dining is one of those that is opening up. We'll talk a little bit about it. I would love to see a Rays baseball game next week. It's not going to happen next week. But even the governor last night, Joe, said that's not out of the question that Major League Baseball still plays the season in St. Pete. So we've got some opportunities ahead if we do this right. We heard from our hospital administrators, elective surgeries are going to start on Monday. They're going to do what we're asking a lot of folks to do, is pre-test anybody who comes into their facility. So if you're getting a surgery scheduled for next week, they're going to ask you to come in beforehand and get tested. And if you have COVID, you're not going to be allowed in for 2 more weeks. Gyms are still going to be are still going to be closed in Florida. So we went against the federal guidelines, and we're going to continue these closed, as well as bars. Now, here's what I want our businesses to understand is we need you to do these things. We need you to encourage teleworking. So like the Chamber of Commerce I mentioned a few shows back, is I'm not going to tell everybody to get back to work. Here's a couple of reasons why. Is I don't want to get into the supply stream just yet, because I think we're being efficient teleworking. I don't want to take away any PPE just yet from anybody. I want to make sure that everybody who needs it really gets it. I would ask every business to consider, do you really need to open up? If you do, I understand, then let's do it the right way. But businesses are going to return to work in phases. You're not going to have your break room open. You're not going to have your dining room open. You're going to have to think of a lot of things about how to really accommodate the people that don't even want to come back into work because of the school system or because of their vulnerable population. So that's the kind of the federal work. Now, what we're telling our businesses to do, this slide should be on everybody's desk if you own a business right now. And these check boxes should be something you should be looking at. On the left, where you see the pictures of the folks talking, that's what we've mentioned about all the gates of our community right now, all those ways that we're going to look at to make sure we're even able to talk about reopening. Today, we got the nod by everybody to say, yes, start talking about reopening. These are the things we have to have every business start encouraging themselves to create. Do you understand your healthy hygiene practices? Have your employees been trained on them? Have you had, and we've learned this from Jeppesen last week, have you had an disinfection and have you done that properly? Make sure you continue to follow those social distancing rules. Make sure that your seats are 6 feet apart. And any of those things that you and I use together. My stapler is my stapler now. I'm not sharing a stapler with you, Joe, just because that's a shared resource that you and I cannot keep clean. So there's so many activities and so many policies that I would ask our businesses to think of. The first one is your liability policy. You may want to decide if you want to put a liability waiver on your customers or your employees. That's a personal decision, and your lawyer and you will make that decision. There is some unfortunate case law that makes us all wonder if we're going to see cases like that. We're asking, and Senator Brandes has taken the lead here in St. Pete at the state level to ensure that we don't have frivolous lawsuits based on that, so that, hey, you and I opened our restaurant and someone says they got sick in our restaurant. We don't want to take that risk. So there will be some notions of your policy manual and your risk assessment need to be addressed. We talked about risk analysis about 2 weeks ago. Dust that off, get going. There's help. We got the Chamber of Commerce and our navigators at the greenhouse. OSHA has a document. Go to OSHA's website. There's a guide for you as a business. It literally lists kind of the things you should be thinking about. It may not be specific to your business, but it's going to be the first step that you're going to need. We're also creating at the Chamber of Commerce user groups, work groups. We have a restaurant work group. We're starting a personal services work group, and we're going to start a retail service group later after this call. I need those 3 groups to come together and put together an outline of your guidelines, your best thinking. And it doesn't mean it's everything you're doing, but you can agree to it. Because what we're going to try to do, Joe, is if restaurants and personal services and retail can start kind of singing from the same book, then we can start telling the residents of St. Pete, look for that pelican or look for that sign, because they're the ones that are doing it right. They're protecting you so you can help them. That's going to be the agreement. So we're going to start asking people to look for that pelican, and we're going to try to get businesses to really support this notion of we are following the St. Pete way, just as the mayor and our community has asked us to do. We can help with that. I've talked to you about this before. We had the team on. If you're a business and you said, hey, Chris, you talk way too fast. I don't know what the heck you're talking about. I read different things on my social media feed. Please call the number that you see there. at 351-3249 or email Kim at the greenhouse at brt@growsmarterstpete.com. There are people waiting to assist you. And in fact, we're building out our teams throughout. And if you're interested in being part of the team, we even have a volunteer role. We're calling it Give Us Five, where you as a business resiliency volunteer can assist us by offering your support. You might be a lawyer who can help with some of those liability concerns, and you'd be willing to give 30 minutes to those who call in and ask for your assistance. We need that help too for all of us to be safely reopened. And then finally, maybe 2, 3, 4, 6, 5 weeks from now, Joe, you and I are going to start having a whole nother conversation about Recover, which is that phase 2 and phase 3 efforts of our community that the government from national and state have looked at. And that's where we start really determining how do we get everybody all back online. So that's for another day. But I'm excited to talk today about Reopen. And I think our members and our business community should start learning about it. But please, 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 step by step, very safely, make sure you're talking about each human you're in contact with. It's the most important part of our jobs.
That's wonderful. It's a lot of information. One perspective I'd like to overlay is that, there's the economy and health and all of those factors. We started a little bit of a dialogue where it seemed to be, the businesses versus the health conscious, and in that stat, the graph you put up there, safety is everything, but the graph you put up there was the economy, and there's such a huge difference between 2020 and 2024. I don't want to go through this until 2024. That would be, unfortunate. And a key is just to know that there's no politician, there's no governing body that in any way wants to hurt the economy. Quite the opposite. And so a lot of people get sucked down into micro perspectives about specific things, a battle over whether I can go to the beach or not or whatever. And I just encourage everyone to stay in the macro. I mean, in that as you were talking, I think I was denied having a kegger and the use of your stapler. And it'd be very easy for me to get some sort of stapler rage going on, right? But that's a micro attitude. And so I'm coming back up to the macro and realize that we're all in this together for the greater good, and to keep that macro perspective makes things a lot easier.
Man, I love that. That's a great way to really talk about it, because what we got to remember to everybody is it's not time to make a political statement. It's time to take care of our neighbors. We say a lot, we're all in this together. Well, now we're going to prove it if we are or not. But I would also say, let's call out bad behaviors, Joe. I mean, it's okay to say to somebody, I need my space. Can you give me 6 feet? It's okay. Don't aggravate yourself, but communicate yourself. It's okay to do that. And it's going to be really important for our businesses to have that backbone as well. We've seen on the national media where a major hospital had our Vice President of the United States and did not communicate that it was a mask-friendly environment that we were asking these people. So you and I have to have awkward conversations about my stapler, right? And we're going to have more awkward conversations, but we're asking you guys to have those awkward conversations to keep us safe and to get us back reopened.
Yeah, and because the reality is, it's not a personal freedom issue. It only works if everybody does it. You can't have half the people running around saying, I feel comfortable, and half not, because the virus still spreads and we still then back down into that 2024 recovery trajectory. It only works if you all do it.
Make no mistake about it. The virus is still out there, and the virus will be out there. It's how we navigate around it until we have a safe way to fight it. And right now, the best way to fight it is stay away from it.
Heard. All right, great information. We'll get this chopped up and put up on the Catalyst ASAP. It might be just after publication, but worth the wait. And we'll look forward to digging into the next 2 phases as well at a later time.
I appreciate it, Joe. Thanks for what you're doing for us.
Thank you.